Welcome to Vegas Realty Check, your go-to podcast for all things Las Vegas real estate. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we bring you the latest market trends, insider tips, and expert insights to navigate the ever-changing Las Vegas realty landscape. Tune in each week as we break down the data, answer your questions, and help you make the best real estate decisions in the entertainment capital of the world.
Hey Vegas, thank you for joining us back here at Vegas Realty Check, your local Las Vegas real estate news show. I am Trish Williams.
And I'm Courtney Bohm.
All right. And well, I guess our big breaking news today
it's raining.
It's raining. I'll play weather girl here. But it's the first rain that we've had in
I think it was saying like over 180 days of actual recorded rain here.
Okay, since we've had rain, so we are glad. We need water in the valley. That's
everywhere.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But traffic, people don't know how to drive when it rains here. We're not used to this type of weather. So what do we got going on in real estate today? On today's show, we're going to be talking about, obviously our market numbers, and then we're going to get into, talking about, values, home value, appraisal contingencies, what to do if you think a home's overpriced. So that's going to be some good stuff that we have, going on today. And, what do we have for homes on the market this week?
So this week, our single family homes on the market are 5,077. So that's up 34 from last week.
Yeah, not bad. And condos and townhouses, 1,855, up 572. There was something weird going on with the numbers last week, and I keep on thinking maybe I just ran them wrong, because that 572, they were they were down 500 and something last week, and now they're up 500 and something this week. So I think there might have been something
wonky
last week somehow, somewhere, but we'll just take that as it is right now. But there is 1,855 on the market of condos and townhomes.
And we do have 905 new listings, which is a good amount, up 31 less than last week.
All right. And then price decreases, those are down 30 from last week at 721.
And we have 815 under contract this week, which is down 4 from last week. So not a huge movement.
Nothing to worry about there. And then our solds are down quite a bit this week. They're 438. They're down 168 from last week. But we are also, most contracts are usually contracts closed towards the end of the month. So we're just, we're in the beginning weeks. So maybe that's
pretty normal.
Maybe that's all we're seeing there. We'll watch it. We'll watch it and see what happens, if that's anything to be concerned about. Where are we with rates?
So rates. So right now our rates are the highest they've been nearly in a month. And I always say that, but there really hasn't been a drastic change in the market in kind of a while. So since January 14th, this is the highest the rates have been. We were getting a little closer to like a 7%, and then we went under a 7% for a moment. Right now, we're sitting right at a 7.1%. For a 30-year conventional, and the FHAV are staying pretty similar. They're right around a 6.5% on a national average. So it did move a little bit, trending upwards, which we kind of expected either way to kind of stay pretty close to what we've been at. And like I said, we're all hoping for March 18th, 19th to see a trend down.
Yeah. This hasn't been discussed, or I haven't seen a discussion about this in the news. And I know some people out there, this is a touchy subject for some, and whatever, I just need to bring it up because I think it's relevant. So this administration right now is working on budget cuts, cutting back all these things and money going out and all this stuff, all these cuts are being made. And I was just looking at the economic aspect of that, of lowering our overall debt, budget, deficit, all of that stuff does lower inflation. And if inflation gets down, even though they're saying that we're not going to see like big movement in rates this year, I feel like they're not factoring in the fact that we might have a very big change in the inflation that we're experiencing, which therefore is going to affect and hopefully lower rates. I mean, is that a valid topic? Because I just kind of looked into it like in general, but I haven't heard anybody talk about that. So I don't know if I'm making this up or.
So a lot has to do with the bond markets and, the stock market and all of those things. So they all kind of coincide with each other. I would like to be able to predict what's going to happen. I don't even, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't have predicted the rates would still be where they're at now.
Absolutely, me neither.
And I don't think a lot of people would have. So I think on the lender side, we always just try to really, really look at the rates are not that high. I think they're higher than, normal, but there has been many times in the past 20, 30, 40 years where the rates were almost double.
Well, historically in the sevens has been a good rate. Like if you look over history, we just got spoiled over, recent years where they were a lot lower. But when I bought my first home, I had the lender like, yeah, you got a 7.5% rate. That's awesome. Good job. And I was like, yeah, okay. That was great. We celebrated.
Yeah. And so I think, there's so many factors. And I think with so many changes happening very quickly with the new presidency, we're hoping to see a trend down. But I don't, like I said, I think these rates are not horrible. I really don't. And I think that realistically, where COVID rates were, I don't think we're ever going to see that again. We're hoping to get into the low sixes by the end of the year. But I do think there's going to be some changes, and I'm hoping to see the rates come down based on a lot of the cuts and a lot of the things that we're trying to help fix at this point.
Yeah, and I just think that it's one thing that not many people are talking about is the uncharted territory that we're kind of going into right now with everything that may have a change other than whatever the expectations have been, because there's this new thing happening that we've never seen happen before. So maybe that will change things. And who knows what the effect will be, but we will watch and see and keep you posted. So you have a loan program to highlight?
Yeah, so today I was just going to briefly touch on manufactured homes.
Okay.
So manufactured homes are basically a home that is built in a factory and brought somewhere. So we can do FHA loans on manufactured homes, and we can do conventional loans. And, it's just a great option to have because it is more affordable typically than a standard home right now, which I think the median price of a home right now is sitting where?
Median prices are in the high fours. I think we're at $485, $495, somewhere around there.
Somewhere right in there.
Manufactured homes are in the twos. They're getting up there in the threes now.
They're not like they used to be.
Not like they used to be. Remember,
I think
50,000?
I think I was just talking to someone actually recently that bought a manufactured home like a few years ago, and they said there was around 100 and something. Yeah. So we know those prices have gone up drastically as well, but it's just a more affordable option to get someone into a home. So
just a quick point on that. One of the, I guess, pullbacks that people have when looking at manufactured homes is they're like, oh, it's never going to appreciate. But obviously, they have appreciated along with everything else.
I think what's an average like a nice one that's on the ground, that there's some that are like 250.
Converted to real property. Well, we sold one recently that was 300, and our like after appraisal and everything came in at 314. So.
And so they're not like they used to be 10 years ago. They're expensive. They're beautiful inside as well. Some of them really nice. So with manufactured homes, we can do loans on those. Typically, it has to be considered a double wide versus a single wide. So they are larger. Mm-hmm. I don't know, the average square footage on those is usually around what, like 1,000?
It varies. Yeah. It just like houses, they'll go 1,000. I've seen some that are like 2,500 square feet. I mean, it can, those things can get pretty big. And ones that are built in recent years look very much like a home inside. Mm-hmm. They have the stuccoed walls, or the, what is it? Texture, drywall, all the stuff on the inside. They've come a long way.
Yeah, they absolutely have. And that's just a great affordable option for someone to look at if maybe they don't want a condo or shared walls with people. They want their own space, their own yard. So with that, and the biggest thing is, you said that earlier, it has to be converted into real property.
Which means that you own the land and it is attached to the land. It cannot be a trailer that you can like hook up and move, because no bank's going to lend on that.
We don't want to lend on something and then all of a sudden the house is gone.
The house is gone. We don't know where
Right?
they went.
So,
Yeah, has to be permanently
Yes.
attached to the ground, which is done with certification
Yes.
and all of, there's a lot of things. And you have to own the land that it sits on.
That's
which is
the biggest thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of communities that have manufactured homes in Las Vegas that you have to pay lot rent, which means that you don't own the land.
You're basically renting the land, but you own the property. The manufactured home.
Yeah.
So, and then you see that a lot in states like Washington, where it's a lot of like the Indian reservations and things like that. So the land has to be owned. You have to physically own the land. And then I've seen things where it's set on a foundation, so people assume it's converted into real property. Not necessarily always the case. So you do actually have to go to the city or the county, and it is a little bit of a process, but we have to make sure it's converted into real property, or essentially it's a vehicle.
Yeah, basically a vehicle.
Literally.
So, yeah. And,
Literally.
And the tax record, once it's converted, the tax record will reflect that, because it will then show square footage of the home. If the tax record does not show square footage of the home, that means that it hasn't been converted into real estate, has not been reflected on the tax record.
Yep. And then there's a little bit of a, not much, but we get a normal appraisal like you would with a regular home. The only thing is that we do have to get what's called an engineer's report. That is a little bit of an extra step. It's a little bit of additional cost, but they're going to make sure the home is what's called structurally sound, and make sure that it is on the foundation, it's properly attached to the ground, and that it's not moving. So that's really the only additional step that it is. Other than that, you can do an FHA, a conventional. And so it's a great option.
Yeah.
Yep, VA as well.
Yep.
So it's a great option for someone who's looking maybe for something a little bit more affordable in this market, but maybe doesn't want a condo, has dogs and wants a full yard.
Yeah, a good entry level.
Absolutely.
And the and some people, a lot of seniors. There's a few like 55 plus communities around here, and a lot of seniors find that as a very affordable option.
Yep.
To be in and still be in an age restricted community. And they have like social calendars and things like that. So that's an option for a lot of people too. There is a year restriction.
A year restriction.
A year restriction, like there's certain age cannot be financed on.
1970, I think it's 78 or 79 now. All of a sudden,
there is
one of those years. So after if it's made before a certain year, they just won't do it. Just based on a lot of things as far as the age, the quality. There's a lot of restrictions on that. So I want to say it was 1978 or 9.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around there too. So there is an age restriction. So look at that, and make sure that you that is considered into it when you are looking. Okay, let's get into our listener question for today from Jasmine. Jasmine wants to make an offer on a house. She thinks the house is priced too high, and she wants to know if there's any way that she can confirm the value before making the offer, because she doesn't want to overpay for the house, but she also doesn't want to offer too low and have her offer rejected.
I think that's a huge concern with probably most people when they're putting in offers, and that's where you come in, right?
That's where we come in. So if you have a good realtor, let me just call some people out right there. No, if you have a good realtor, you can ask your realtor to run you some comparables on the house. So basically get an estimated value of, and I advise this in any case, get an estimate of what that home should be selling for. And we all see in almost every market, there's always times where there's a home, and sometimes it's just because it's like super upgraded, super attractive, super beautiful home, and it's priced a little higher than the comparables, but it also has multiple offers. So, like while you're like to offer this certain price, that's not going to get you the home. And the appraiser has to be the person that goes in and factors in those upgrades to decide what that value is. And it could come in at that value because it has enough going for it to justify it, or market conditions have changed and everything like that. So comparables are estimates. They're not the end all be all. And unfortunately, the appraisers are usually the end all be all.
They are. In
some cases. I mean, you're never forced to agree with the appraisal, but we'll talk about that too. So talk to your realtor about comparables. Find out what the average comparables are. I mean, if the house is priced $100,000 over the last sold comparable in the neighborhood, might just be something you want to stay away from.
And right? I'm sure that goes the same for something being completely upgraded to the opposite, which is something that probably has some fix, right? So what are the price? If there's a property that, maybe really needs to have some renovations done, then obviously there's some talking points on maybe getting that price down a little bit.
Right, and sellers can price a house however they want to price it. At the end of the day, I mean, sometimes it's I've had times literally where I have called a realtor and just said, I'm not finding anything to even remotely justify the price that you have this house listed for. Can you please help me out? Where'd you get this number from? Help me understand. Am I missing something? What's going on here? And I have literally had realtors tell me, yeah, it's completely overpriced. We have nothing to justify it, but the seller said that's their number. That, and that happens. It's real estate. No one can make you sell a home at a certain price. So again, always very a good practice to look at those comparables and see where you're at. And then days on the market.
I mean, that's important because that's going to say a lot as to, clearly, if it's been on the market for a long time, then usually there's something going on.
Price is too high. Condition.
Yeah.
And nobody else really wants it right now. It's kind of like if you're single and out dating or whatever, and you're really nice guy, seems like everything's okay. You're he's all right, but why is he still single? There's got to be an issue, right?
I mean, not always, but a lot of times.
I hear that from people. So I have
quick question. So what if, and I know Vegas, it's so much easier to price because a lot of the homes are next to a similar home that have just been sold, and there's 50 of the same house in the same neighborhood. But what if there's a house that there really isn't anything to compare it to?
And we run across that a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in luxury. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
When it comes to luxury, a lot of times, when we're talking about pricing luxury, a lot of times it is kind of a good strategy to have an appraiser, pre-appraise the home.
Yeah.
Does not mean you cannot use that appraisal. If the buyer's financing, you can't just hand them that appraisal and say, use this. It still has to get, their own, another appraisal done, but it does give you a good ballpark because they'll take it, based off, it's basically based off price per square foot and everything that the home has. So there's that too. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's a little bit of guesswork and a lot of estimating.
Yeah, I think here that's probably less luxury market, of course, because every house is so different. But in places where I'm from, like Michigan, every house next to each other looks completely different. So it's not so cookie cutter. But I mean, you do run across that as well.
Yeah, and then you just take the average. Maybe the house isn't the same, but the square footage is the same.
Similar.
The area is similar. The lot that it's on similar, and run numbers based off that. But again, still a lot of estimating, a lot of guessing on what this might add to the value and what this might add to the value, and those things. And, we already talked about condition being considered in the offer. I mean, if the condition's poor, you want to take that into consideration when making the offer. If you're making the offer and you have no competition, I mean, I would say, go in tough. Most sellers, if they're in reasonable mind, are going to counter and try to work with you to come somewhere in the middle. I mean, there's a difference between coming in strong and aggressive on an offer and coming in with an absolute low ball.
Just being ridiculous.
Yeah. I rarely see lowball offers get any, I mean, usually the seller gets offended and just rejects. You know,
Yeah.
it's too far off. Like if you're offering $100,000 off what they're asking and there's nothing to justify this offer that you're sending in, you're probably not going to get them to even play ball with you. They're just going to say no.
And then at that point, you've probably upset them and they're probably ignoring you, and that's it.
And if you come back, and I've seen that happen too, where they're like, okay, let me come back with a better offer now, where they're already they're already upset with you, and now they're just not, you know, you're not, that doesn't help you. So that is not a good strategy. And then you also need to consider if you're asking for concessions.
So if you're asking for concessions to be used towards closing costs and things like that, then typically the negotiation, I'm sure, is a lot less if they're coming out of pocket to help you get into a home. I'm sure there's some negotiations, but I'm sure it's less than what it would be if you weren't asking for that.
Yes, absolutely. Because, well, I don't know, and it's just the mindset of some people. They think it's all like free money, you know, like tell them to pay the closing costs. Like somehow this is like free somewhere. But at the end of the day, and this is something I always explain to my clients, like if you're asking for $10,000 in closing costs, right? At the end of the day, that's $10,000 off your offer price. Even though it's not going towards the purchase price, it's coming off their net, it's off your offer price. So that is a factor to consider as well. You know, usually if you're asking for a large amount of closing costs, you have to have a somewhat attractive offer to even have that be a chance.
Absolutely.
We are in a more buyer-friendly market right now, but it still is a factor that has to be considered. You know, if you want someone to take your offer, you have to, you know, make it has to be a win-win. It has to be, you know, something that you're going to be okay with, but they also have to feel like they're not, you know, getting shafted in the whole thing too.
I think it has to be a fair negotiation, right? At some point, especially if it's a house that's attractive and the price is, you know, around a median price point. Now, I'm sure in the luxury market and things that are more excessive, there's probably a little different type of negotiation that goes on, but you're also not usually getting seller concessions and all these other things covered. And a lot of people assume that you can just get endless amounts of seller concessions, which is not the case either.
Yeah. And, you know, another thing I think is a good tip for buyers out there, I feel like some buyers, maybe buyers agents out there, there's definitely a school of thinking out there that thinks like I can go in and, you know, list them all the things that we don't like about the house, and that's going to make them take a lower offer. But what you don't take into mind when you do things like that is sometimes this is people's family home. Mm-hmm. Like it has, you know, they've had it for many years. There's somewhat of an emotional attachment to it.
Absolutely. Most of the time, I think.
Don't go in and insult people because that will often get you nowhere. If it's something that is definitely a material fact, like, you know, the house has like plumbing issues and you're saying, I'm giving you this offer because there's obvious plumbing issues. Obviously, that's reasonable. But if you go in and say like the carpet's ugly and I hate the color of the walls and the kitchen's hideous, you know, or like go in, and I've had realtors like send these like very insulting emails and tell me to tell my clients this so that they will take their offer. And I'm like, this isn't going to go over well. So obviously keep in mind that, you know, regardless of what your plans are for the home, this still might be that person's family home that means a lot to them. So keep that in mind when you're trying to do negotiations. And then, I mean, appraisals. So we talked a little bit about appraisals. If you're doing a loan,
absolutely,
and you go into contract, say you go into contract at, let's just throw numbers out there. Say you're going to contract at $500,000, okay? And you're doing a loan and the appraisal comes in at $480,000. We have a $20,000 difference. What happens?
So something's going to have to happen.
Yes.
So either someone has to pay the difference or price has to change, and that's usually a sticky topic because what it means is that the value of the home came in differently than what it's priced. So now we have a price gap.
Yes. And the loan will not give you a loan on a home that is not, it has to appraise at the contract price.
Correct.
So there's no way around that. You can't get the funds. Again, there's always the option to throw cash at it on top, or seller says I'll drop 10,000, buyer says I'll pay an extra 10,000, but that's not even something we are seeing commonly right now in this environment, because really in this environment, the buyers are paying a lot of fees, things like that. They're just saying like we have to drop it to a appraised value and go forward with that. So it's the seller's decision, not mandatory.
Correct.
So
I think you were seeing, and we were just talking about this, I think you were seeing a huge value gap when COVID was, when these houses were selling for so much higher
and appreciating so quickly.
Yeah, there was a lot of appraisals coming back that were just really different than what the purchase price was, and it was interesting.
Yeah. And people were paying over. That was common in the market. So it depends on what's common in the market that you're purchasing in too.
Absolutely.
And the other thing with the appraisal gaps is, if the seller refuses and says, I'm not going to work with you, the buyer doesn't have the funds to come in, because we have many situations that happen like that. The buyer's like, I don't have the extra cash to put 20,000. I need you to drop the price. And the seller says, no, I'm not doing it. And that appraisal, in most cases, like if they're doing an FHA appraisal, they can't, if they get another FHA buyer within, 160 or 190 days?
Yeah, 180.
180 days, then that appraisal is sticking with that property. So then they have to eliminate FHA buyers out of their pool of buyers. And go towards, conventional or try VA. Doesn't mean that appraisal is going to come in higher the next time. It could, and I'm warning the sellers, it could come in lower. It could come in lower. And I've seen that happen too. I've seen that where
the market changes.
Yeah.
So.
I've seen that happen where a seller says no to one because they just refuse to accept the appraisal, and we go in again and the next one comes in lower and they're like, what the heck? I want the old one back.
Greed is real. I think really at that point it's like, the both agents need to have a talk with the seller, talk with the buyer, and especially if you're trying to get a home sold, it's like, let's come to some point where we can both be okay with whatever the outcome is.
Right. And you have to factor into the cost of holding.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the cost of holding the property isn't worth the amount that you're fighting over. Especially when it's like minimal, like $5,000, you're like, okay, 2 more months of mortgage payments, you're going to pay that $5,000. If this house didn't have a lot of activity and you have a buyer, this makes more sense.
100%, especially a buyer that's already qualified where everything's good to go. And then it's like, you're really going to let that just go for, I don't think you're seeing as many of that kind of situation at this point. I think things are pretty dead on with how the appraisals are coming back lately. So it's more rare that you're seeing that. Obviously during COVID, totally different. I saw appraisals come in, like I was telling you, $100,000 different, which is an extreme.
Yeah.
But, I think that's where your negotiating skills and really, having those types of conversations come into play to get the deal done.
Yeah. And then another thing that, another, I guess, kind of word of caution, because I have heard people say, in certain situations, especially when there's multiple offers, let's just offer higher and we know the appraisal will come in lower and then they'll have to drop the price. And it's a strategy, but not always a good one.
No.
Because I've seen that happen where people had expected that, and the appraisal came in on target, a contract price. Can't guarantee what that number is going to come into. So there goes your strategy out the window. So I warn people about that. And also the fact that seller doesn't have to sell. And you could go in with this great strategy to try to beat out all the other offers. And then when you come down to that, seller says, nope, not doing it. And then you lose. Usually if you have an appraisal contingency, your earnest money deposit is still refundable. So you get that back in most cases, but you have the inspection fees because your home inspection is usually done but before the appraisal is, and you have your appraisal fee, which, that is, that it can be substantial, around $1,000 or more, once all those fees are put together. So that, Are you willing to risk that money? And if you are, some people are like, yeah, that's nothing. Let's just see if it works. fine. You know, that really just has to be something you keep in mind before getting into that situation.
And that's why it's so important to have a great realtor, because at the end of the day, it's the guidance that a lot of people need when they're going into these situations. And a home is usually most people's largest purchase they ever make.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for sellers, it's their largest investment. And,
Absolutely.
you know, they do want to get every bit of value back on that, because that's, you know, a lot goes into it. A lot goes into it over the years. So, yeah. So, Courtney, if anybody wants to talk to you about getting some money, finances, loan programs, all of this good stuff, how do they reach you?
Yeah, give me a call, 702-416-6918, or shoot me over a text.
All right. If you guys want to find your home or sell your home, you can call me, 702-308-2878. Want to give a shout out to our marketing partner, Chicago Title. Thank you for your support. And we also would like you to check out our Linktree website, which is realtycheck.vegas. You can find everything about us there. You can link to us in like all different portals on that website and see what's going on. Connect with us, see what we're doing. Send in these listener questions so we have something to talk about on the show.
Yeah.
And we will see you guys next week.